The grave beside the human. Imagine standing in a quiet archaeological excavation. The sun hangs low over a windswept landscape. Dust drifts through the air as researchers carefully brush away layers of soil that have remained untouched for thousands of years. Every grain of dirt removed reveals another fragment of a story that has been waiting patiently beneath the earth. Slowly, a skeleton emerges. The bones belong to a human being who lived long ago, so long ago that no written record survive. No name remains, no voice, no memory passed down through generations. Only bones. The archaeologists continue their work, carefully uncovering the grave. Then they notice something unexpected. Beside the human skeleton lies another set of bones. Not a horse, not a cow, not a sheep, a dog. The animal has been placed deliberately next to the person. Its body rests in a position suggesting care and intention. This was not discarded food. It was not hunting waste. It was not an accident. Someone placed the dog there. Someone chose to bury it. And suddenly a question emerges from the ancient soil. Why? Why would people thousands of years ago bury a dog beside a human? What relationship existed between them? What story connected these two lives strongly enough that even death could not separate them? These questions have fascinated archaeologists for generations. Again and again, excavations across the world have revealed evidence of ancient dog burials. From frozen Siberian landscapes to deserts in Egypt. From prehistoric villages in Europe to settlements in the Americas. From hunter-gatherer camps to early farming communities. Dogs appear in graves. Sometimes they are buried alone. Sometimes they rest beside children. Sometimes they lie next to adults. Occasionally, they receive their own carefully prepared tombs. Many of these burials are astonishingly old. Some date back more than 14,000 years. Others may represent relationships that began even earlier. The discovery of these graves forces us to confront a remarkable possibility. The bond between humans and dogs may be one of the oldest emotional relationships in human history. Today, millions of people consider dogs members of their families. Dogs sleep beside us, travel with us, comfort us, protect us, celebrate our return home, mourn our absence. Many owners speak of their dogs with the same affection they feel for close friends or relatives. When a beloved dog dies, grief often follows. Photographs are kept. Memories are shared. Some people create memorials. Others keep ashes. Many feel a deep sense of loss. It is tempting to imagine that such emotions belong only to the modern world. After all, ancient life was harsh. People struggled to survive. Food could be scarce. Danger lurked everywhere. Disease, injury, starvation, and violence were constant threats. Under such conditions, it might seem unlikely that people would devote emotional energy to animals. Yet the graves suggest otherwise. The evidence repeatedly points towards something deeper. The careful placement of bodies, the presence of grave goods, the signs of ceremonial burial, the extraordinary effort invested in these graves. Together they hint at affection, respect, loyalty, and perhaps even love. Of course, the story is not simple. Dogs served practical purposes too. Long before agriculture transformed human societies, dogs assisted hunters. They tracked prey, detected predators, garded camp, provided warning during the night. A skilled dog could improve a group's chances of survival. Losing such an animal might have carried enormous consequences. Some burials may reflect gratitude toward valuable working companions. Others may have religious meanings. Many ancient cultures believed dogs possessed special spiritual abilities. They were seen as guardians, protectors, guides, and companions for the dead. In myths across continents, dogs often appear at the boundaries between life and death. They watch over sacred places. They escort souls. They stand at the gates of the afterlife. Perhaps some dogs were buried because people believed they would continue their duties in another world. Perhaps they would guide their owners beyond death. Perhaps they would protect them one final time. The more archaeologists investigate ancient dog burials, the more complex the picture becomes. There is no single explanation, no universal answer. Human societies differed enormously across time and geography. A dog buried in Ice Age Europe may have held a very different meaning from a dog buried in ancient Egypt. A hunting companion in Siberia may not have shared the same role as a ceremonial dog in the Americas. Yet despite these differences, one pattern appears again and again. Humans care enough about dogs to treat their deaths as significant events. That fact alone is extraordinary, because when we look far enough into the past, most things disappear. Wood rots, cloth decays, memories vanish, languages fade, entire cultures are lost. But sometimes a grave remains. And inside that grave, two skeletons still lie side by side. Silent, patient, waiting. The human is gone. The dog is gone. Yet the relationship survives. Not through writing, not through monuments, not through stories passed from generation to generation. It survives through the choices people made thousands of years ago. Choices preserved in earth and bone. Someone dug a grave. Someone placed the dog carefully inside. Someone covered both bodies with soil. Someone believed that the animal deserved more than abandonment. And because of that decision, we can still glimpse their connection today. Over the course of this journey, we will travel back tens of thousands of years. We will follow the first wolves that approached human campfires during the Ice Age. We will explore how those wolves gradually became dogs. We will examine some of the oldest dog burials ever discovered. We will meet hunting partners, guardians, companions, and spiritual guides. We will visit ancient Egypt, prehistoric Europe, Siberia, and the Americas. We will uncover stories hidden within bones, DNA, and forgotten graves. And by the end, we may come closer to understanding why ancient humans buried their dogs. Because these graves are not really about death. They are about relationships. They are about loyalty. They are about trust. They are about one of the most successful partnerships ever formed between two species. A partnership that began around distant campfires long before cities, kingdoms, or written language existed. A partnership that changed both human history and canine history forever. And it all began with a wolf approaching a fire in the darkness. Chapter 1. The first wolf that approached the fire. Imagine a world without cities. No roads. No farms. No houses. No written language. No nations. Only endless wilderness stretching beyond the horizon. The year is not 2026. It is not even 2,000 years ago. Instead, we are traveling back somewhere between 30 and 40,000 years into the distant past. This is the Ice Age. Huge glaciers cover vast portions of the northern hemisphere. Great sheets of ice dominate landscapes that today contain forests, towns, and cities. Temperatures are colder than most people can easily imagine. Winters are long. Storms are fierce. Survival is never guaranteed. Human beings are already here. But these humans do not live as we do. They are hunter-gatherers. Small bands of people move across enormous territories searching for food. They follow migrating animals. They gather edible plants when seasons permit. Every day requires effort. Every day requires vigilance. Life is difficult. A failed hunt may mean hunger. An injury may become a death sentence. A sudden storm can threaten an entire group. Yet humans are not alone in this harsh world. Across the frozen plains roams another highly intelligent predator, the wolf. Ancient wolves are powerful animals. They travel in packs. They communicate through vocalizations, body language, and scent. They cooperate during hunts. They care for their young. Like humans, they depend upon social bonds for survival. Like humans, they thrive through teamwork. At first glance, wolves and humans might seem destined to be enemies. After all, both hunt similar prey. Both compete for resources. Both occupy the role of top predator. Yet history suggests something very different happened. Instead of becoming permanent rivals, humans and wolves formed one of the most extraordinary partnerships the natural world has ever seen. Exactly how this happened remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. No one was there to record the first meeting. No ancient witness left behind a written account. The beginning of the relationship survives only through clues. Bones, DNA, archaeological sites, and scientific theories. Among researchers, one of the most widely discussed ideas begins with food. Imagine a human camp at the end of a successful hunt. A large animal has been killed. Meat is consumed. Bones are broken open for marrow. Scraps remain scattered around the camp. To hungry wolves wandering nearby, such leftovers would be extremely attractive. Perhaps some wolves began approaching human camps after dark. Not closely, not boldly, just close enough to scavenge discarded remains. The humans likely noticed them. The wolves certainly noticed the humans. At first, both sides would have been cautious. Humans understood the danger posed by large predators. Wolves understood the danger posed by humans armed with spears. Distance provided safety. Yet over many generations, something interesting may have occurred. The least aggressive wolves gained an advantage. Wolves that could tolerate human presence had access to easy food. They spent less energy hunting. They faced fewer risks pursuing dangerous prey. Natural selection began favoring individuals with calmer temperaments. Meanwhile, humans also benefited. The wolves consumed waste. Their presence could alert camps to approaching predators. They served as an early warning system. Without anyone consciously planning it, a mutually beneficial relationship may have started to emerge. Generation after generation, wolves that were slightly friendlier toward humans survived more successfully around camps. Their offspring inherited similar traits. Gradually, over centuries and millennia, these animals began changing. Not all scientists agree that scavenging alone explains domestication. Another possibility involves wolf pups. Imagine hunters discovering a wolf den. Inside are several young pups. Perhaps the adult wolves have died. Perhaps the pups are orphaned. Perhaps people simply decide to take them. Human beings are naturally drawn to young animals. Even today, many wild species appear less threatening as babies. A wolf pup raised among humans might become accustomed to people. It might form social bonds. It might accompany hunters. It might learn to trust. Of course, many such experiments would likely fail. Adult wolves remain wild animals. But occasionally a particularly social individual may have adapted surprisingly well to life alongside humans. If such animals reproduced, they could contribute to the gradual emergence of domesticated populations. Some researchers believe both processes occurred simultaneously. Scavenging wolves approached quand humans occasionnellement adoptent pups. Over thousands of years, the boundary separating human society from wolf society became increasingly blurred. What makes this story remarkable is that neither side was passive. Humans changed wolves, but wolves also changed humans. Consider hunting. Humans already possessed intelligence, tools, and cooperation. Wolves possessed exceptional senses. Their hearing was sharper, their sense of smell vastly superior. Their ability to track prey over long distances was extraordinary. A partnership offered advantages neither species could achieve alone. Humans could provide protection, food, and shelter. Canine companions could provide detection, tracking, and warning. Together, they became more effective than either could be independently. Some anthropologists have even suggested that this alliance helped humans become more successful hunters. If true, dogs may have influenced the course of human history itself. Entire communities could have benefited from improved hunting success. More food meant better survival. Better survival meant population growth. Population growth meant expansion into new territories. All because of a friendship forming around ancient campfires. Yet beyond practical advantages lies another possibility: the beginning of emotional connection. Imagine a young wolf pup raised among children. The animal grows up alongside the group. People feed it, play with it, protect it. The pup learns human voices, learns human routines, learns trust. Years pass. The animal becomes an adult. It hunts with the group, travels with them, sleeps near their fires, warns them of danger. At what point does such a creature stop being merely useful? At what point does it become companion? We cannot know exactly when the first emotional bonds emerged, but we know something important. They eventually did. The archaeological record makes that clear. Thousands of years later, humans would bury dogs with care. They would place them beside children, beside adults, inside graves prepared with obvious attention and respect. Such behavior rarely develops overnight. It grows gradually through shared experiences, through trust, through cooperation, through countless days spent together. Perhaps the roots of those future burials began here, not in a cemetery, not in a temple, but beside an ice age fire. A cautious wolf lingers at the edge of the light. Humans watch from the camp. Neither side fully understands what is beginning. Neither side knows that their descendants will remain together for tens of thousands of years. Neither side knows they are creating one of the oldest friendships in history. The wolf takes another step closer. The humans do not chase it away. A relationship begins. And from that moment forward, the stories of humans and dogs become inseparable. Long before the first dog was ever buried beside a human grave, the foundation of that bond was already being built. One campfire, one hunt, and one act of trust at a time. Chapter 2. When Dogs Stopped Being Wolves. Imagine returning to that Ice Age campfire generation after generation. The first wolves that approached human camps were still wolves in every sense of the word. They looked like wolves. They behaved like wolves. They possessed the instincts of wild predators that had survived for thousands of years without human assistance. Yet something subtle was beginning to happen. The change was so slow that no person living in the time would have noticed it. A child might grow old and see no obvious difference. 100 generations might pass before the transformation became clear. But evolution does not need speed. It only needs time. And time was something humans and wolves had in abundance. As centuries turned into millennia, the animals living near humans gradually became different from their wild relatives. The friendliest wolves tended to remain closest to camps. The most aggressive wolves usually stayed away. Those calmer animals were more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass their traits to future generations. Without realizing it, humans were becoming a powerful force of selection. Nature was still at work, but human society had become part of the process. Scientists often compare this transformation to a famous experiment conducted in the 20th century. Researchers in Russia selectively bred foxes based solely on friendliness toward humans. Generation after generation, they chose the least aggressive foxes. The results were astonishing. The animals not only became friendlier, they also began changing physically. Their ears became floppier, their tails curled, their faces became shorter and more rounded. Their coats developed new colors and patterns. Simply selecting for behavior produced unexpected changes throughout the body. Many researchers believe something similar happened during the domestication of dogs. The earliest dogs did not suddenly appear. Instead, they emerged through countless small changes accumulating over enormous stretches of time. The animals that eventually became dogs started looking different from wolves. Many became smaller. Their skulls changed shape. Their teeth often became less robust. Their faces appeared shorter. Some developed markings rarely seen among wild wolves. Others displayed variations in coat color. The changes were not identical everywhere. Different human groups likely encouraged different traits. Some may have preferred larger animals for protection. Others may have favored smaller companions. But across many regions, the trend was clear. These animals were becoming something new. Something neither fully wolf nor fully modern dog. A species shaped by an unusual partnership. Yet physical appearance tells only part of the story. The most important changes were occurring inside the mind. Wild wolves are intelligent creatures, but their social world revolves around wolf packs. Dogs, however, developed an extraordinary ability. They learned to understand humans. Today, dogs can interpret human gestures in ways that surprise even scientists. A dog can follow a pointing finger. It can recognize emotional expressions. It can respond to tone of voice. It can often anticipate human behavior with remarkable accuracy. Many studies suggest that dogs are unusually skilled at reading people. Even young puppies often perform better than wolves in experiments involving human communication. Some researchers believe this ability became one of the defining features of domestication. Over thousands of years, dogs evolved to live not merely beside humans, but with humans. Their social instincts expanded to include an entirely different species. In a sense, humans became part of the dog's pack, and dogs became part of ours. Imagine how revolutionary this would have been. Throughout most of nature, cooperation between different predator species is rare. Predators compete. They avoid one another. They fight over resources. Yet humans and dogs gradually formed a relationship built upon trust. A hunter might rely on a dog to locate prey. A dog might rely on a human for food and protection. Each depended on the other. Such dependence creates bonds, and bonds create emotions. Although archaeologists cannot directly excavate feelings, evidence suggests emotional attachment was already emerging long before recorded history. Consider the amount of effort required to raise young animals. Puppies require food, care, protection, attention. People would not have invested such resources without receiving something valuable in return. Over time, practical relationships often become personal ones. Anyone who has ever shared daily life with an animal understands how easily affection develops. Imagine an early dog accompanying a family through every season. The animal travels with them, sleeps near them, protects them, warns them of danger, joins their hunts, shares their successes, endures their hardships. Year after year, the dog becomes woven into the rhythm of daily life. It is difficult to imagine such companionship existing without emotional connection. Modern neuroscience provides another fascinating clue. Studies have shown that when dogs and humans interact positively, both experience increases in oxytocin. This hormone is often associated with social bonding. It plays important roles in relationships between parents and children. Remarkably, similar biological mechanisms appear to operate between humans and dogs. When a dog looks into its owner's eyes, hormonal responses occur in both species. In some ways, evolution appears to have strengthened the emotional bridge connecting them. Of course, Ice Age people knew nothing about hormones. They did not need scientific studies to recognize loyalty. They experienced it directly. They saw dogs return from hunts. They heard warning barks during the night. They watched animals protect camps and children. Trust accumulated through experience, and trust deepened over generations. As dogs became increasingly integrated into human communities, they occupied a unique position unlike any other animal. Humans domesticated many species: cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, horses. But dog arrived first, and dogs occupied a different role. Most domesticated animals were valued primarily for products or labor. Dogs offered something else: partnership, companionship, cooperation, a relationship that extended beyond simple utility. This distinction may explain why dog burials appear so early in the archaeological record. People do not usually conduct elaborate funerals for tools. They do not carefully position objects in graves because they love them. Yet many ancient dog burials display signs of care that suggest something deeper than practical usefulness. Those burials were still thousands of years in the future, but the foundations were already being laid. Each generation of dogs grew more comfortable around humans. Each generation of humans grew more accustomed to sharing life with dogs. Together, they transformed one another. The wolves changed, the humans changed, and a new relationship emerged. Imagine looking across an Ice Age camp one evening. Children laugh beside a fire. Hunters prepare tools. Food cooks over glowing embers. Nearby lies an animal. Its ancestors once feared humans. Its ancestors watch from the darkness beyond the firelight. But this animal does not stay in the darkness. It rests among people. It belongs here, not because it has been forced to remain, but because thousands of years of partnership have made this place its home. The animal lifts its head as familiar voices speak. Its tail moves. Its ears respond. Its attention follows the humans around it. The transformation is not yet complete. The creature still resembles its wild ancestors. Yet the future is already visible. The wolf is becoming a dog, and the dog is becoming humanity's closest animal companion. One day, that bond will become strong enough that people will mourn their dogs. Strong enough that they will bury them with care. Strong enough that archaeologists thousands of years later will uncover those graves and wonder about the relationship they reveal. But before we reach those discoveries, we must visit some of the oldest dog burials ever found. Because hidden beneath the earth are graves that provide the first direct evidence of just how important these animals had become. Chapter 3. The Oldest Dog Burials Ever Found. Imagine kneeling in a trench cut deep into ancient soil. Around you stand archaeologists armed with brushes, measuring tools, notebooks, and cameras. Every movement is careful. Every discovery matters. Beneath their hands lies a world that vanished thousands of years ago. Most excavations reveal fragments. A broken tool, a stone blade, a few scattered bones. But sometimes archaeologists uncover something far more powerful. A grave. And occasionally, inside that grave, they find a dog. Not butchered, not discarded, not mixed randomly with food waste. A dog that was intentionally buried. A dog that someone cared enough to place beneath the earth with dignity. These discoveries provide some of the strongest evidence that the relationship between humans and dogs became emotional long before written history began. One of the most famous examples comes from what is now Germany. More than 14,000 years ago, near the end of the last ice age, a remarkable burial took place. At a site known as Bonn Oberkassel, archaeologists discovered the remains of two humans buried alongside a dog. The grave dates to approximately 14,200 years ago. Think about that for a moment. This burial occurred thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt, thousands of years before Stonehenge, thousands of years before the invention of writing. Yet someone chose to bury a dog beside human companions. The dog itself tells an extraordinary story. Researchers examining its bones discovered evidence that the animal had suffered from a serious illness while young. The disease would have left the puppy weak and vulnerable. Without assistance, it likely would not have survived. Yet it did survive. For weeks, possibly months. The only reasonable explanation is that humans cared for it. Someone fed the sick animal. Someone protected it. Someone invested time and effort into keeping it alive. This was not simply a tool. This was a living companion worth caring for even when it could provide little practical benefit. The burial itself suggests that bond continued until death. The grave preserved more than bones. It preserved evidence of compassion. And Germany is far from the only place where such discoveries have been made. Thousands of kilometers away, in what is now Israel, archaeologists uncovered another famous burial. This grave dates to roughly 12,000 years ago. Inside lay an elderly human. Curled against the person's hand was a puppy. The positioning is remarkable. The human hand appears to rest gently upon the dog. Even after thousands of years, the arrangement conveys a sense of tenderness. No one can know precisely what the burial meant. Yet it is difficult to view the scene without imagining affection. The image feels familiar. Many modern dog owners have slept with a hand resting on a beloved pet. Across 12 millennia, the gesture remains recognizable. Human beings change. Cultures change. But some emotions seem surprisingly constant. The burial in Israel offers a rare glimpse into that possibility. Farther north, in Siberia, archaeologists have discovered equally fascinating evidence. The frozen landscapes of northern Eurasia preserve ancient remains exceptionally well. Here, researchers have uncovered dogs that received burial treatment, suggesting special status within their communities. Some were interred individually. Others appear to have been treated in ways normally reserved for humans. At several sites, dogs were placed carefully into graves rather than discarded with ordinary refuse. Such actions require effort. Digging a grave is work. Preparing a burial takes time. Hunter-gatherer societies often lived under difficult conditions where energy was precious. When people repeatedly devote resources to burying animals, archaeologists pay attention. The pattern suggests meaning. Another extraordinary discovery comes from the Lake Baikal region of Siberia. This area contains numerous prehistoric burials involving dogs. In some cases, dogs were buried wearing ornaments. Others received treatment comparable to that given human community members. One dog was buried with objects that may have carried symbolic significance. The care invested in these graves implies that certain animals occupied respected positions within society. Perhaps they were exceptional hunters. Perhaps they held spiritual importance. Perhaps they were simply beloved companions. The exact reasons remain uncertain, but the graves themselves reveal that these dogs mattered. Meanwhile, in Russia, excavations have uncovered dog remains associated with prehistoric settlements dating back thousands of years. Several burials indicate deliberate placement rather than accidental deposition. The animals were not tossed aside after death. Their bodies were arranged with intention. This distinction is important. Archaeologists spend considerable effort determining whether a burial was deliberate. Natural processes can sometimes move bones. Animals can disturb graves. Erosion can alter sites. Researchers must examine evidence carefully. When they conclude that a burial was intentional, it usually rests on multiple observations. Body position, Geruchsstruktur, associated artifacts, patterns repeated across sites. The cumulative evidence from numerous locations strongly suggests that ancient people often buried dogs deliberately, and this behavior appears across vast geographic distances. Europe, the Middle East, Russia, Siberia, different cultures, different environments, different ways of life. Yet similar practices emerge again and again. This widespread pattern raises an important question. Why? Why devote so much attention to dogs? One explanation is practical value. Dogs were incredibly useful. They assisted hunts, protected camp, provided warning against danger. A particularly skilled dog might contribute significantly to a group's survival. When such an animal died, burial could serve as recognition of its service. That possibility certainly explains some cases. But practical value alone does not seem sufficient for every burial. The Bonn Oberkassel puppy survived because humans cared for it during illness. The puppy in Israel was placed beside a human hand. Other dogs received ornaments or ceremonial treatment. These details hint at something more than usefulness. They suggest emotional attachment. Of course, emotions leave no fossils. Archaeologists cannot excavate love directly. There is no bone labeled affection, no artifact labeled grief. Researchers must infer feelings through actions, and actions speak loudly. When humans repeatedly care for sick dogs, bury them carefully, and place them beside family members, those behaviors imply strong social bonds. The evidence does not prove exactly what ancient people felt, but it reveals how they behaved. And behavior often reflects emotion. Another fascinating aspect of these ancient burials is their timing. Many occurred before agriculture transformed human society. These were not wealthy civilizations with surplus resources. They were hunter-gatherers, people whose survival depended on daily effort. Under such conditions, every decision carried weight. Time invested in an animal represented a meaningful commitment. Yet these communities repeatedly chose to care for dogs, repeatedly chose to bury them, repeatedly treated them differently from ordinary animals. That pattern speaks volumes. Imagine one of these prehistoric funerals. A dog has died. Perhaps it was old. Perhaps it succumbed to illness. Perhaps it was injured during a hunt. The community gathers. People who knew the animal stand nearby. Children who grew up with it watch silently. Hunters remember journeys shared across forests, and plains. Someone digs a grave. Someone places the body carefully inside. Perhaps a favorite object accompanies it. Perhaps words are spoken. Perhaps rituals are performed. The details are lost, but the burial remains. Thousands of years later, archaeologists uncover the grave. The people are gone. Their language has vanished. Their names are forgotten. Yet the burial still communicates a message. The message is simple. This dog mattered. And because so many similar graves exist across the ancient world, the conclusion becomes difficult to ignore. Long before history was written, dogs occupied a special place in human lives. Not merely as working animals, not merely as tools, but as companions whose deaths were important enough to remember. The graves tell us that much. In the chapters ahead, we will discover why. Because to understand why people bury dogs, we must first understand how deeply they depended upon them. In the world before agriculture, survival often rested upon a partnership between hunter and hound. And for many communities, that partnership meant the difference between life and death. Chapter 4. Hunters and their most important partner. Imagine waking before dawn in the prehistoric world. The air is cold. A thin layer of frost covers the ground. The campfire that burned through the night has faded into glowing embers. Around you, members of your hunting group begin to stir. Today, like countless days before it, survival depends on finding food. There are no supermarkets, no farms, no stored supplies waiting in a pantry. What your group eats tomorrow may depend entirely on what happens today. A successful hunt means nourishment. A failed hunt means hunger. And standing beside the hunters is an animal that has become one of humanity's greatest allies. The dog. For modern people, it can be difficult to appreciate how valuable dogs once were. Today, many dogs live primarily as companions. They sleep on couches, play in parks, travel in cars. But for much of human history, dogs were also essential working partners. Their skills help people survive in environments that could be unforgiving and dangerous. To understand why ancient humans buried dogs with such care, we must understand how important they were during life. Imagine a group of hunters preparing to track a herd of animals. The prey may be deer, wild horses, reindeer, or perhaps smaller game hidden within dense vegetation. The hunters face a difficult challenge. Animals are experts at avoiding predators. They leave only faint traces behind. A broken twig, a footprint, a scent carried on the wind. Humans possess intelligence and observation skills. But dogs contribute something extraordinary. Their sense of smell. A dog's nose is among the most remarkable biological tools in nature. Modern research suggests that dogs possess hundreds of millions of scent receptors. Humans possess only a fraction of that number. To a dog, the world is filled with information carried through scent. A trail invisible to humans may be obvious to a dog. A prey animal that passed hours earlier can still leave detectable clues. Imagine the advantage this provides. Hunters no longer need to rely solely on eyesight. Their canine companions can locate trails that would otherwise remain hidden. The dog moves ahead. Its nose remains close to the ground. It follows scents through forests, grasslands, and snowy landscapes. The hunters follow behind. Together, they become a more effective team. Archaeological evidence and historical observations suggest that dogs assisted hunting in many different ways. Some dogs specialized in tracking. Others helped corner prey. Some flushed animals from hiding places. Others pursued wounded game. Each role increased the likelihood of success. And success meant food. Food meant survival. In harsh environments, even small improvements in hunting efficiency could have enormous consequences. A successful hunt could feed families, support children, help communities survive difficult seasons. Dogs contributed directly to those outcomes. But hunting involved more than simply finding prey. Danger was always present. Many animals fought back. Imagine confronting a massive wild boar. Its tusks are sharp. Its strength is immense. One mistake can cause serious injury. Or consider hunting large deer, elk, or bison. These animals are powerful and unpredictable. A wounded animal can become extremely dangerous. Dogs often served as both assistants and protectors during such encounters. They distracted prey, forced animals to change direction, created opportunities for hunters to approach safely. Without canine assistance, some hunts would have been far more difficult and far more dangerous. This partnership developed over thousands of years. Humans learned to understand canine behavior. Dogs learned to understand human intentions. The relationship became a sophisticated form of cooperation. Imagine a hunter noticing subtle changes in a dog's posture. The animal has detected something. Its attention focuses in a particular direction. Its movements become purposeful. Without words, communication occurs. The hunter understands. The dog understands. Together, they move toward their objective. This silent cooperation may have felt almost magical. Two different species working toward a common goal, each relying on abilities the other lacked. Such cooperation naturally builds trust, and trust strengthens bonds. The dog was not merely present during important moments. The dog participated in them. Every successful hunt reinforced the relationship. Every meal obtained through teamwork deepened mutual dependence. Consider the emotional impact of sharing life and death experiences. Modern soldiers often form strong bonds with comrades. Rescue workers develop deep respect for colleagues. Athletes create friendships through shared challenges. Ancient hunters likely experienced something similar with their dogs. Together, they faced uncertainty. Together, they endured hardship. Together, they succeeded. Over time, such experiences transform partners into companions, and companions into family. Archaeological evidence suggests that some dogs lived long enough to develop significant wear and injuries. Researchers have discovered signs of healed fractures and age-related conditions in ancient dog skeletons. Many of these animals survived injuries that would have been difficult to overcome without human assistance. This tells us something important. People cared for them. A severely injured hunting dog might no longer contribute effectively to hunts. Yet some survived long after such injuries occurred. Their communities continued supporting them. Why? Perhaps because usefulness was not the only factor. Perhaps loyalty mattered too. Imagine an old dog approaching the end of its life. Years earlier, it tracked game across frozen landscapes. It warned camps of danger. It helped feed families. Now its muzzle is gray. Its movements are slower. Its senses are fading. Yet the people around it remember. They remember the hunts. The dangers escaped. The winters survived. The meals shared. The relationship has become part of community memory. When such a dog dies, burial becomes understandable. Not because it was merely an animal, but because it was a partner, a companion, a participant in countless moments of survival. Anthropologists often emphasize that prehistoric life was deeply social. Individuals depended upon one another. Cooperation increased chances of survival. Dogs fit naturally into that social structure. They were not outsiders. They became members of the group. Some researchers even suggest that certain dogs may have possessed individual reputations within their communities. Exceptional hunters, reliable guardians, trusted companions, animals known and remembered by specific people. While we can never know their names, the care shown in many burials suggests they were recognized as individuals rather than interchangeable animals. This idea becomes even more convincing when we consider the effort required to bury them. Graves represent investment, time, labor, attention. People rarely devote such resources to things they consider unimportant. The repeated appearance of dog burials across thousands of years suggests that many communities viewed these animals as far more than practical tools. And perhaps nowhere was that appreciation more obvious than during moments of danger. Because hunting was not the only way dogs helped humans survive. When darkness fell and camps settled into uneasy sleep, another role emerged. A role just as important as hunting. A role that may have saved countless lives. The role of guardian. For while humans slept beside fading fires, dogs remained alert, listening, watching, waiting, ready to warn their companions of threats lurking beyond the edge of the firelight. And sometimes that warning made all the difference. Chapter 5. The Dog Who Saved the Camp. Imagine a prehistoric camp at night. The hunt is over. The evening meal has been shared. Children have fallen asleep. The fire crackles softly beneath a sky crowded with stars. For a brief moment, everything seems peaceful. But beyond the circle of firelight lies darkness. And in that darkness, danger waits. For most of human history, night was one of the most vulnerable times of day. Modern people rarely think about this. We lock doors, switch on lights, call for help if needed. Ancient humans possessed none of these advantages. When darkness arrived, visibility disappeared. Threats became difficult to detect. Predators moved unseen. Strangers could approach unnoticed. A sleeping camp was exposed. Yet many prehistoric communities had an important advantage. Dogs. Long before alarm systems, security cameras, or electric lights, dogs served as one of humanity's earliest warning systems. Their senses remained active even while people rested. Their hearing exceeded human capabilities. Their sense of smell was vastly superior. Their instincts constantly monitored the environment. A dog could detect danger long before humans became aware of it. Imagine lying beside a fading fire 20,000 years ago. The camp sleeps. Wind moves through nearby grass. Somewhere in the darkness, a predator begins to approach. Perhaps it is a wolf pack. Perhaps a large cat. Perhaps a bear drawn by the scent of food. The animal moves quietly. The humans remain unaware. But a dog lifts its head. Its ears twitch. It smells something unfamiliar. Moments later, barking erupts across the camp. People wake instantly. Weapons are grabbed. Children are protected. The threat loses its element of surprise. The outcome changes. Such scenarios likely occurred countless times throughout prehistory. We can never know exactly how many lives were saved by vigilant dogs. But the potential importance is obvious. An early warning system can mean the difference between safety and disaster. The value of such protection would have been difficult to overstate. Large predators were not imaginary threats. Ice Age landscapes contained formidable animals. Lions, hyenas, bears, wolves. Many possessed the size and strength to threaten humans under the right circumstances. Most predators preferred avoiding people when possible. Yet encounters still occurred. Food stored near camps could attract unwanted visitors. Injured individuals might become vulnerable. Small children could face particular risk. Dogs helped reduce these dangers. Their vigilance extended human awareness beyond the limits of human senses. But predators were not the only concern. Human beings sometimes posed dangers as well. Prehistoric groups occasionally competed for resources. Territories overlapped. Conflicts occurred. A sleeping camp surprised by strangers would face a serious disadvantage. Again, dogs offered protection. Their ability to detect approaching individuals gave communities valuable time to respond. A warning bark could alert an entire camp before outsiders arrived. This role as guardian appears repeatedly throughout history. Even after agriculture emerged and civilizations developed, dogs continued serving as protectors. Ancient texts describe watchdogs. Historical accounts praise their loyalty. Folklore celebrates dogs that defended homes and families. The roots of that reputation likely stretch deep into prehistory. People remembered the animals that protected them. And memory matters. Imagine a particular dog within a small hunter-gatherer community. Night after night, the animal remains alert. It notices unusual sounds, responds to unfamiliar scents, warns the camp whenever something approaches. Years pass. The dog becomes known for its reliability. Children grow up trusting it. Adults depend upon it. The animal develops a place within community life, not merely as a worker, but as a protector, someone, or perhaps something, that stands watch while others sleep. Such roles often inspire affection. Protection creates gratitude. Gratitude strengthens emotional bonds. The more people depend upon an animal, the more significant that animal becomes. This connection appears in many traditional societies documented by anthropologists. Dogs frequently occupy positions that blend practical usefulness with social importance. They are workers, guardians, companions, members of daily life. These categories overlap. The relationship cannot be reduced to a single purpose. And perhaps this complexity explains why dog burials appear so meaningful. The dogs were not simply hunting tools, nor were they merely alarm systems. They were individuals embedded within the social fabric of their communities. Each animal accumulated experiences shared with humans. Each developed a unique history. Some may have participated in dozens of hunts. Others may have become famous for guarding camps. Still others may have earned affection through companionship alone. Their value extended beyond any single function. Archaeological evidence occasionally provides hints of this importance. At certain prehistoric sites, dogs appear to have received treatment comparable to respected human community members. Such burials suggest that at least some animals occupied elevated positions within society. Researchers cannot always determine exactly why, but protection remains one plausible explanation. A dog that repeatedly saved lives would certainly deserve recognition. Imagine another scene. A winter night. Snow falls heavily. Visibility is poor. The camp sleeps beneath animal hides. Nearby, danger approaches. Perhaps a predator. Perhaps a rival group. The details do not matter. What matters is that one dog notices. It barks. The camp awakens. People survive. The threat passes. The dog returns to its place beside the fire. Years later, when that animal dies, memories remain. The people remember. The dog that warned them. The dog that protected their children. The dog that stood guard through countless nights. Would they simply discard such an animal? Or would they honor it? Many ancient burials suggest the answer. Again and again, people chose burial. Again and again, they invested effort in commemorating canine companions. The graves indicate that dogs mattered, not only because they hunted, not only because they worked, but because they participated in the lives of the people around them. And perhaps nowhere is this more evident than within the concept of family. Over thousands of years, dogs moved closer and closer to human communities. They shared camps, shared journeys, shared dangers. Eventually, for many people, they shared something even more intimate. Home. The dog was no longer simply outside the camp protecting it. The dog was part of the camp itself, part of daily life, part of human relationships, part of the family. And once that happened, the meaning of dog burials became even deeper. Because the next chapter is not merely about survival. It is about affection. It is about companionship. It is about the moment when dogs stopped being viewed only as useful animals and became something much more personal. They became family. Chapter 6. When dogs became family. Imagine a prehistoric camp, not during a hunt, not during a moment of danger, but during an ordinary day. Children are playing nearby. Adults are preparing tools. Food is being cooked over a fire. Conversations flow between members of the group, and moving naturally among them is a dog. No one pays special attention to its presence, not because it is unimportant, but because it belongs there. It is part of everyday life. This may be one of the most important developments in the entire history of the human-dog relationship. At some point, dogs stopped being merely useful animals that happen to live near people. They became companions woven into the fabric of human existence. They shared journeys, shared meals, shared shelters, shared experiences. Over thousands of years, dogs moved from the edge of the campfire into the center of human society. And once that happened, something profound occurred. People began treating them less like animals and more like family. Of course, family meant something different in prehistoric societies than it often does today. Most communities were small. People lived closely together. Survival depended on cooperation. Every member of the group mattered. Relationships were strong because they had to be. Within these environments, dogs occupied a unique position. Unlike livestock, they traveled with people. Unlike wild animals, they remained close. Unlike tools, they possess personalities. Anyone who has spent time with dogs understands this immediately. Dogs are individuals. Some are bold. Some are cautious. Some are playful. Some are serious. Some seek attention constantly. Others remain quietly loyal from a distance. Ancient people undoubtedly noticed these differences as well. Over years of companionship, they would have come to know specific dogs as distinct individuals. Not simply a dog, but this dog, the one who always followed the children, the one who barked at strangers, the one who slept nearest the fire, the one who accompanied hunters, the one who never left a particular person's side. Individual personalities encourage emotional attachment. The more familiar an animal becomes, the harder it is to view it merely as a tool. Imagine a child growing up alongside a dog. Both are young. Both are learning about the world. They play together, explore together, travel together. As the years pass, the dog becomes a constant presence. When the child is frightened, the dog is nearby. When the child laughs, the dog is there. When the family moves camp, the dog comes too. Such relationships create memories, and memories create bonds. Modern dog owners often describe their pets as family members. While we cannot directly interview prehistoric people, archaeological evidence suggests similar feelings may have existed thousands of years ago. One clue comes from the way dogs were cared for. Researchers have discovered ancient dog skeletons showing signs of severe injuries or illnesses that healed during life. Some animals survived conditions that would have made hunting difficult or impossible. Broken bones, joint diseases, dental problems, serious infections. These dogs lived long enough for healing to occur. That survival often implies human assistance. Someone provided food. Someone offered protection. Someone cared for the animal even when it could no longer contribute effectively. From a purely practical perspective, this behavior can seem surprising. In societies where resources were limited, caring for a disabled animal required effort. Yet people repeatedly did so. Why? One possibility is emotional attachment. The dog mattered beyond its practical usefulness. Its value was personal. Its presence was important. Its life was worth preserving. That idea becomes even more compelling when we examine where dogs lived. Evidence from archaeological sites suggests dogs often occupied the same spaces as humans. They slept near camps, traveled with communities, shared living areas. In some cases, dog remains appear within domestic settings rather than separate locations. This physical closeness likely encouraged emotional closeness as well. Think about how relationships develop. People become attached to those they see every day, those who share experiences, those who remain present through difficult times. Dogs excel at precisely this kind of companionship. They are remarkably social animals. They seek interaction. They form bonds. They pay attention to human behavior. Over generations, these traits may have strengthened the emotional connection between both species. Scientists studying modern dogs have discovered something fascinating. Dogs appear unusually attuned to human emotions. They often respond to facial expressions. They recognize vocal tones. Many seem capable of detecting sadness, fear, or happiness. Whether ancient dogs possessed exactly the same abilities is impossible to know. But the foundations of these traits likely developed during the long process of domestication. As dogs adapted to human society, understanding people became increasingly valuable. The result was a relationship unlike any other. Two species learning to read one another. Two species sharing daily life. Two species evolving together. This partnership affected both sides. Humans shaped dogs through domestication. Dogs shaped human experiences through companionship. Over time, emotional bonds grew stronger. And strong bonds often reveal themselves most clearly through grief. Imagine an elderly dog nearing the end of its life. For years, it has accompanied a family. Children who once played with it are now adults. The animal has witnessed countless journeys, countless hunts, countless evenings beside the fire. Its presence has become part of the rhythm of life. Then one day the dog dies. The camp feels different. The familiar companion is gone. The absence is noticeable. The silence is noticeable. The loss is noticeable. Anyone who has experienced the death of a beloved pet understands this feeling. The routines remain, but something important is missing. Many archaeologists believe some ancient dog burials reflect precisely this kind of grief. Not abstract symbolism, not purely religious practice, but genuine sadness. The sadness that emerges when a valued companion disappears. Of course, proving emotion archaeologically is difficult. Researchers must remain cautious. A burial cannot tell us exactly what someone felt. Yet actions leave clues. And the actions surrounding many dog burials suggest care. Bodies were positioned carefully. Graves were prepared deliberately. Sometimes dogs were buried individually rather than discarded. These choices indicate significance. The dead animal mattered, perhaps as a worker, perhaps as a spiritual figure, perhaps as a friend, often likely all three. Family relationships are rarely based on a single factor. We value family members not because they perform one task, but because they share our lives. Dogs increasingly occupied that role. They participated in daily experiences. They formed emotional connections. They became part of household routines, part of community memory, part of human identity. And nowhere is this emotional connection more visible than in some of the most touching discoveries archaeologists have ever made. Because in certain ancient graves, dogs were not buried beside hunters. They were not buried beside warriors. They were buried beside children. And those burials reveal something deeply moving about the relationship between humans and dogs thousands of years ago. For if a community chose to place a dog beside a child in death, the bond between them must have been extraordinarily meaningful. The next chapter explores those remarkable graves and the stories they still tell after thousands of years beneath the earth. Chapter 7: The Child and the Dog. Imagine an archaeologist carefully brushing away soil from an ancient grave. At first, only a few bones become visible. The small size suggests the remains belong to a child. The excavation continues slowly and respectfully. Then another skeleton begins to emerge beside the child. Not an adult, not another child, a dog. For a moment, time seems to collapse. Thousands of years disappear. Because even before the grave is fully uncovered, a familiar image begins to take shape. A child and a dog. It is a relationship that feels instantly recognizable. Across cultures and across centuries, children and dogs have often formed close bonds. Stories, photographs, paintings, and memories are filled with examples. A child throws a stick. A dog chases it. A child cries. A dog remains nearby. A child explores the world. A dog follows faithfully behind. The connection feels natural. And archaeological discoveries suggest it may be far older than most people realize. Some of the most emotionally powerful dog burials ever discovered involve children. Again and again, archaeologists have uncovered graves in which young humans and dogs were placed together. The reasons vary. The meanings remain uncertain. But the pattern itself is difficult to ignore. Someone deliberately chose to place the dog beside the child. Someone believed the relationship mattered. One of the challenges archaeologists face is that graves rarely explain themselves. There are no labels, no written descriptions, no surviving witnesses. Researchers must interpret clues left behind in bone, soil, and burial arrangements. Yet even with those limitations, certain discoveries stand out. When a child and a dog are buried together, questions immediately arise. Were they companions during life? Was the dog intended to protect the child in death? Did the burial carry symbolic meaning? Or did it reflect genuine affection between two individuals? The answer may differ from grave to grave, but all of these possibilities reveal something important. Dogs occupied a special place in human thought. Imagine a prehistoric child growing up in a small community. life is very different from today. There are no schools, no television, no smartphones. Most learning occurs through direct experience. Children observe adults, practice skills, explore their surroundings. And often, dogs are part of that world. A dog may accompany children during daily activities. It may tolerate rough play, remain nearby during adventures, offer companionship during long journeys. For a young child, a dog might be one of the most constant presences in life. Unlike adults, who leave to hunt or gather resources, a dog often remains close. Unlike siblings, who may grow older and develop separate responsibilities, the dog continues following along. A friendship develops, not because anyone plans it, but because daily life brings them together. Anyone who has watched a child interact with a trusted dog can understand the potential depth of that bond. The dog becomes a playmate, a protector, a source of comfort, a familiar friend in a sometimes difficult world. Now imagine that one of them dies. Perhaps the child dies first. Perhaps the dog. The surviving community faces a painful loss. And in some cases, they may have chosen to preserve the connection through burial. The decision to place a dog beside a child suggests intentionality. The relationship mattered enough to be remembered, enough to be represented in death, enough to become part of a funeral ritual. One interpretation is companionship. Perhaps the dog was the child's closest friend. In small prehistoric communities, companionship carried enormous significance. Daily interactions were deeply personal. Relationships shaped survival, identity, and emotional well-being. If a dog had shared years of life with a child, burying them together may have felt appropriate. Another possibility involves protection. Many ancient cultures viewed dogs as guardians, not only during life, but also in spiritual contexts. A dog buried beside a child may have been intended to watch over them in the afterlife, to guide them, to protect them, to accompany them on a journey beyond death. This idea appears repeatedly in cultures around the world. Dogs often occupy the role of protector of boundaries. They guard camps, guard homes, guard sacred spaces. Eventually, they become associated with guarding souls as well. A burial joining a child and a dog could reflect that belief. Yet another possibility is symbolic friendship. Human societies frequently use burial practices to express relationships. Spouses may be buried together. Family members may share graves. Objects associated with a person's identity may accompany them. In this context, a dog placed beside a child could symbolize an important connection recognized by the community. The message may have been simple. These two belong together. What makes these discoveries so moving is their familiarity. The graves are ancient. The people lived in worlds completely different from ours. Their languages are lost. Their customs often remain mysterious. Yet the image of a child and a dog still resonates emotionally. It feels understandable, human, relatable. Across thousands of years, we recognize the bond. This emotional response does not prove what ancient people felt, but it highlights how similar certain experiences may have been. Love for companions is not a modern invention. Affection for animals is not unique to contemporary society. The roots of those emotions likely stretch deep into prehistory. Archaeological evidence increasingly supports that idea. Some researchers argue that dogs played important social roles within families. They were not simply working animals assigned specific tasks. They participated in daily life, shared living spaces, formed relationships with individual people. Children, in particular, may have experienced especially close connections. Dogs can be patient companions, protective friends, sources of comfort during uncertainty. Such qualities would have been valuable in ancient communities just as they are today. Imagine a young child falling asleep beside a campfire. Nearby lies a familiar dog. The child feels safe. The dog feels comfortable. Neither understands that thousands of years later, people will wonder about their relationship. Neither knows that archaeologists may someday uncover their grave. All they know is the present moment. A simple companionship, a shared life. a bond built through countless ordinary days. And perhaps that is what makes these burials so powerful. They remind us that history is not only about kings, wars, and civilizations. It is also about relationships, about friendships, about moments of trust and affection between living beings. The child and dog graves reveal a side of prehistory that is deeply personal. They show that emotional connections existed long before written records, long before monuments, long before famous historical figures. And those connections may have extended beyond life itself. Because as we continue exploring ancient dog burials, we encounter another fascinating idea. Many societies did not believe death marked the end of a journey. Instead, they imagined another world beyond, a spirit world, an afterlife. And in that mysterious realm, dogs often occupied an important role, not merely as companions, but as guides, as guardians, as creatures capable of leading souls through the unknown. To understand why so many dogs were buried with care, we must now step beyond the physical world and enter the realm of ancient belief. For in many cultures, dogs were thought to possess powers that extended far beyond life itself. Chapter 8: Dogs in the Spirit World. Imagine standing beside a grave thousands of years ago. The burial has been prepared. Family members and community elders gather nearby. The body is placed carefully into the earth. The moment is solemn. But for many ancient people, this was not simply a farewell. It was a departure, a journey, a transition from one world into another. Throughout human history, countless cultures have believed that death was not the end of existence. Instead, they imagined an unseen realm beyond ordinary life, a spirit world, an afterlife, a land of ancestors, a place where the dead continued their journey after leaving the world of the living. And surprisingly often, dogs appeared within these beliefs. Again and again, across vast distances and different cultures, dogs became associated with the boundary between life and death. They guided souls, protected travelers, guarded sacred pathways, watched over entrances to the afterlife. The connection appears so frequently that many researchers believe it reflects something fundamental about the human perception of dogs. After all, dogs were already guardians in life. They protected camps, warned families of danger, stood watch during the night. Perhaps it was only natural that people imagined them continuing these duties after death. The darkness beyond the campfire was mysterious. So was the darkness beyond life itself. And in both cases, dogs seemed like trustworthy companions. Some of the earliest evidence comes from ancient cultures across northern Eurasia and Siberia. These regions contain numerous archaeological sites where dogs appear to have held special spiritual significance. In certain communities, dogs were buried with unusual care. Some received treatment resembling that given to humans. Others were interred in ways suggesting ritual importance. Researchers believe that these burials may reflect beliefs about the spiritual power of dogs. To people living in harsh northern environments, dogs were more than helpers. They were companions through difficult landscapes, guides across dangerous terrain, partners in survival. It is not difficult to imagine how such practical roles could evolve into spiritual symbolism. A creature capable of guiding humans through frozen wilderness might also be imagined guiding souls through the unknown landscape of the afterlife. In many indigenous traditions across the world, dogs occupy similarly important positions. The specific stories vary enormously from culture to culture, yet common themes often emerge. Dogs serve as protectors, messengers, guides, watchers at important boundaries. Some traditions describe dogs helping the dead navigate dangerous journeys after death. Others portray them as guardians who prevent harmful spirits from causing trouble. Still others emphasize loyalty, suggesting that faithful dogs remain companions even after life ends. These beliefs are difficult to trace to a single origin. Instead, they appear to have developed independently in many different places. The pattern itself is fascinating. Why dogs? Why not deer? Why not birds? Why not other domesticated animals? Part of the answer may lie in the unique relationship humans developed with dogs. No other animal shared human life in quite the same way. Dogs traveled with people, slept beside them, protected them, accompanied them during both ordinary and dangerous moments. Their loyalty became legendary. When people imagined a companion capable of guiding them beyond death, dogs were obvious candidates. Trust matters, and few animals earn human trust as consistently as dogs. Another reason may involve the behavior of dogs themselves. Even today, dogs sometimes appear intensely aware of things humans cannot detect. They react to distant sounds, notice unfamiliar scents, become alert to subtle environmental changes. To ancient observers, such abilities may have seemed mysterious. Dogs appeared capable of perceiving hidden aspects of the world. That perception could easily become associated with spiritual knowledge. If dogs could detect things beyond human awareness, perhaps they could also perceive spiritual realities. Perhaps they could navigate places inaccessible to ordinary people. Perhaps they could guide souls where humans could not go alone. Over time, such ideas became woven into mythology and ritual. Archaeological evidence occasionally supports these interpretations. At certain sites, dogs were buried in ways suggesting ceremonial significance rather than simple disposal. The placement of bodies, the inclusion of grave goods, the location of burials, all hint at symbolic meanings. Researchers must be cautious when interpreting such evidence. Ancient beliefs are often difficult to reconstruct accurately. Yet the repeated association between dogs and spiritual practices remains striking. Imagine a prehistoric funeral. A respected community member has died. The mourners gather. Rituals begin. Perhaps songs are sung. Perhaps prayers are offered. Perhaps stories are shared. And somewhere within those ceremonies, a dog occupies an important role. Not merely because it was useful during life, but because it is believed to possess spiritual significance. Perhaps the dog will accompany the deceased. Perhaps it will protect them. Perhaps it will show them the way. The details vary, but the underlying idea remains recognizable. Dogs become companions for journeys that extend beyond the physical world. This concept may also help explain certain dog burials found alongside humans. In some cases, archaeologists have discovered graves where dogs appear intentionally associated with specific individuals. The connection may reflect affection. It may reflect status. But in some circumstances, spiritual beliefs could also play a role. A dog buried beside a human might have been intended as a guide, a protector, a companion for the journey ahead. Again, certainty is impossible. Yet the possibility cannot be ignored, especially because similar ideas appear repeatedly across continents and centuries. What makes these beliefs particularly interesting is that they build upon real experiences. Dogs genuinely protected people. They genuinely guided hunters. They genuinely remained loyal companions. The spiritual symbolism did not emerge from nowhere. It grew from everyday life. Ancient people observed dogs performing important roles. Then they extended those roles into the realm of imagination and belief. The guardian of the camp became the guardian of souls. The guide through forests became the guide through the afterlife. The faithful companion became the eternal companion. In this way, practical relationships and spiritual ideas reinforced one another. The more valuable dogs became in life, the more meaningful they became in belief. And the more meaningful they became in belief, the more likely communities were to honor them after death. These traditions varied widely across the ancient world. Some cultures emphasized protection. Others emphasized guidance. Still others connected dogs with divine powers. But nearly all reflected a common truth. Dogs were not ordinary animals. They occupied a special place in human thought, a place somewhere between companion and symbol, between helper and guardian, between the physical world and the spiritual one. And perhaps nowhere is this connection more dramatic than in one of the world's most famous ancient civilizations. a civilization that mummified dogs, built cemeteries for them, associated them with a powerful god of the dead, a civilization where the relationship between dogs, death, and the afterlife reached extraordinary heights. To understand that story, we must travel from the frozen landscapes of prehistory to the banks of the Nile. There, among temples, tombs, and pyramids, dogs would become part of one of humanity's most sophisticated spiritual traditions. And at its center stood a mysterious figure with the head of a canine, a guardian of the dead known as Anubis. Chapter 9. The Dogs of Ancient Egypt. Imagine standing on the banks of the Nile more than 3,000 years ago. The river flows steadily through the desert, bringing life to one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history. Fields of grain stretch across fertile floodplains. Boats drift along the water. Farmers tend crops. Priests perform rituals in massive temples. Kings commission monuments that will survive for millennia. This is ancient Egypt, a civilization famous for pyramids, mummies, and elaborate beliefs about the afterlife. It is also a civilization that held a special place for dogs. By the time Egypt reached its height, the partnership between humans and dogs was already ancient. Thousands of years had passed since the first wolves approached prehistoric campfires. Dogs had become hunters, guardians, companions, and symbols. In Egypt, they would become something even more remarkable. They would become sacred. Dogs lived throughout Egyptian society. They guarded homes, accompanied hunters, protected livestock, served as companions. Ancient artwork frequently depicts dogs standing beside their owners, following hunting parties, or resting within households. Many Egyptian dogs looked different from modern breeds. Some resembled slender, hunting dogs with long legs and narrow faces. Others were more robust. Yet regardless of appearance, dogs occupied an important place in everyday life. One clue comes from the names Egyptians gave their dogs. Ancient inscriptions reveal that many dogs were individually named. Some names described physical characteristics. Others reflected personality traits. A few have survived through thousands of years. Names such as Brave One, Reliable, and Good Herdsman suggest that people viewed dogs as individuals rather than anonymous animals. Naming is significant. Humans usually reserve names for beings they recognize as distinct members of their social world. The practice hints at emotional connection. A dog with a name is more than a tool. It is someone known, someone remembered, someone valued. This attachment becomes even more visible in Egyptian burials. Archaeologists have discovered numerous examples of dogs receiving funerary treatment. Some were buried individually. Others were interred within dedicated animal cemeteries. In certain cases, inscriptions commemorated beloved canine companions. One ancient grave even includes an inscription honoring a dog that appears to have been cherished by its owner. These burials reveal a society willing to invest effort and resources in remembering dogs after death. Yet perhaps the most famous evidence comes from the phenomenon of dog mummification. When most people think of Egyptian mummies, they imagine pharaohs wrapped in linen and placed within elaborate tombs. But Egyptians also mummified animals. Millions of them. Cats, birds, crocodiles, monkeys, and dogs. The scale is astonishing. Archaeologists have uncovered enormous animal cemeteries containing vast numbers of mummified creatures. Some dogs were mummified as offerings associated with religious practices. Others may have been honored because of their personal significance. The exact motivations varied, but the result is clear. Dogs occupied an important position within Egyptian religious life. This religious significance is closely connected to one of the most recognizable figures in Egyptian mythology. Anubis is often depicted as a man with the head of a jackal or canine-like animal. To modern eyes, the image can appear unusual, but to ancient Egyptians, it carried profound meaning. Anubis was associated with death, burial, mummification, and the protection of the dead. He watched over tombs, guided souls, guarded sacred spaces, In many ways, he embodied qualities already associated with dogs and related canines. Why did Egyptians choose a canine figure for such an important role? Part of the answer may lie in observation. Wild canids, including jackals, were often seen near cemeteries at the edges of desert settlements. These animals became linked with burial grounds. Rather than viewing them solely as threats, Egyptians transformed that association into religious symbolism. The result was Anubis, a powerful guardian standing between life and death. But there may be another reason as well. Dogs were already known for loyalty, protection, watchfulness, all qualities suitable for a guardian of the dead. The same animal that protected homes could protect tombs. The same companion that guided hunters could guide souls. Thus, practical experience and religious imagination merged together. Anubis became one of the most enduring deities in Egyptian culture. For centuries, priests conducted rituals invoking his protection. Funerary texts described his role in the journey of the dead. Artisans painted his image on tomb walls. His presence reassured people that loved ones would be cared for after death. The connection between dogs and the afterlife had reached an extraordinary level of sophistication. Yet religion was only part of the story. Archaeological evidence suggests that ordinary Egyptians also loved individual dogs. At some burial sites, dogs appear to have received treatment reflecting genuine affection rather than purely religious symbolism. One particularly touching discovery involved a dog buried with a collar. Another contained inscriptions commemorating a specific animal. Such details hint at personal relationships that would feel familiar to many modern dog owners. Imagine an Egyptian family saying goodbye to a beloved dog. The animal may have spent years guarding the household, accompanying family members, sharing daily routines. When it died, burial offered a way to express respect and remembrance. The emotional impulse is recognizable even across thousands of years. What makes Egypt especially fascinating is how thoroughly dogs became integrated into multiple aspects of society. They were practical workers, household companions, religious symbols, funerary guardians. Few cultures preserved evidence of canine importance as extensively as ancient Egypt. And yet, despite the grandeur of temples and the fame of Anubis, the underlying story remains surprisingly simple. Humans trustadugis. Humans baluadugis. Humans believed dogs could protect them, sometimes in life, sometimes in death. The forms of that belief changed over time, but the bond endured, and Egypt was not alone. Far across the oceans, in lands entirely unknown to Egyptian civilization, other peoples developed their own traditions involving dogs. Different cultures, different languages, different histories, yet many arrived at remarkably similar conclusions. Dogs were companions. Dogs were helpers. Dogs were spiritual figures. Dogs mattered. The next chapter takes us to the ancient Americas, where archaeologists have uncovered dog burials that reveal another chapter in humanity's long relationship with its oldest animal friend. Chapter 10: Dogs of the Ancient Americas. Imagine a world before European ships crossed the Atlantic. A world before horses returned to the Americas. Before steel swords, gunpowder, and written records arrived from overseas. Across North and South America, countless societies flourished. Some lived as hunter-gatherers. Others built villages, cities, and vast trade networks. They spoke hundreds of different languages, practiced different traditions, believed different stories about the world. Yet among many of these cultures, one familiar companion appears again and again: the dog. Long before European contact, dogs had already become deeply woven into life throughout the Americas. Archaeological evidence shows that dogs accompanied people across the continents for thousands of years. They traveled with communities, participated in hunts, appeared in rituals, and, just as in many other parts of the world, they were often buried with care. These discoveries are particularly fascinating because the peoples of the Americas developed their traditions independently from those of Europe, Africa, and much of Asia. Yet despite being separated by oceans and vast distances, many cultures arrived at surprisingly similar ideas about dogs. The pattern suggests something powerful about the relationship itself. Wherever humans and dogs lived together for long enough, bonds formed. And those bonds often found expression in burial practices. One of the earliest pieces of evidence comes from ancient settlements across North America. Archaeologists have uncovered dog remains dating back thousands of years, many showing signs of deliberate burial. The bodies were positioned carefully, sometimes placed individually, sometimes associated with human graves or ceremonial locations. These are not random deposits. Someone intentionally buried these animals. Someone believed they deserved recognition after death. In some cases, dogs appear to have played important roles in hunting. Before the arrival of horses, dogs were among the few domesticated animals available to many indigenous communities. They help track prey, locate game, assist hunters in difficult terrain. Their contributions could significantly improve hunting success. Imagine a hunting party moving through forests thousands of years ago. The dogs move ahead, following scents invisible to humans. Their ears remain alert. Their noses constantly gather information. The hunters trust them, depend upon them. Together they pursue deer, elk, rabbits, or other animals essential for survival. The partnership looks remarkably similar to hunting relationships documented elsewhere in the world. Different continent, same cooperation, same reliance, same bond. But dogs in the Americas were not valued solely for hunting. Many communities also viewed them through a spiritual lens. Ethnographic records and oral traditions collected in later centuries reveal that dogs frequently occupied important positions in indigenous belief systems. Specific traditions varied enormously from one culture to another. The Americas contained hundreds of distinct societies, each with its own worldview. Yet common themes appear repeatedly. Dogs were often associated with travel, protection, and the journey of the soul. In some traditions, dogs guided the dead. In others, they guarded pathways between worlds. Certain stories describe dogs helping spirits cross rivers or navigate dangerous landscapes after death. These ideas may sound familiar, because similar beliefs emerged independently in many parts of the world. Again and again, dogs became linked to transitions, boundaries, journeys, protection. Why? Perhaps because these roles reflected their importance during life. Dogs already guided people through forests, already protected camps, already accompanied humans during difficult journeys. Extending those functions into spiritual beliefs felt natural. The companion of life became the companion of death. Archaeological discoveries sometimes support these interpretations. At several sites throughout the Americas, dogs appear in contexts suggesting ceremonial significance. Some were buried with unusual care. Others were placed in locations associated with ritual activity. Researchers debate the precise meanings of these burials, but many agree that dogs occupied positions beyond simple utility. They mattered socially, emotionally, spiritually. One particularly interesting aspect of dog burials in the Americas is their diversity. No single pattern dominates. Some dogs received individual graves. Others were buried near humans. Some appear connected to ritual practices. Others seem more personal. This variety mirrors the complexity of human societies themselves. Different communities had different reasons for honoring dogs. For some, practical value may have been most important. For others, spiritual beliefs played a larger role. And for many, affection likely contributed as well. These explanations are not mutually exclusive. A dog could simultaneously be a hunting partner, a spiritual symbol, and a beloved companion. Human relationships are rarely simple. Neither are human-animal relationships. Imagine a dog living within an ancient village. It spends years among the community. Children know it by sight. Hunters know its abilities. Elders recognize its presence. The animal participates in daily life. When it dies, the loss affects many people. How should such a creature be treated? discarded as refuse, or honored? Many ancient communities chose honor, and their choice remains visible thousands of years later. Another fascinating clue comes from the physical remains of the dogs themselves. Some skeletons reveal evidence of long lives. Others show healed injuries. A few display signs that humans cared for them despite illness or disability. These patterns resemble evidence found in Europe and Asia. Across continents, people repeatedly invested effort in maintaining relationships with dogs. The similarities are striking. Independent cultures often reached comparable conclusions. Dogs were worth caring for, worth remembering, worth burying. The ancient Americas provide another chapter in a global story, a story that stretches from Ice Age camps to agricultural villages, from frozen Siberian landscapes to tropical forests, from deserts to mountains. Everywhere humans and dogs shared life, they developed connections that transcended simple practicality. The graves reveal those connections, silent but enduring. Each burial represents a decision. Someone dug a grave. Someone placed the dog inside. Someone believed that animal mattered. Thousands of years later, we still see the evidence. The details differ from culture to culture, but the message remains surprisingly consistent. Dogs were companions. Dogs were partners. Dogs were important. And perhaps nowhere is that importance more visible than in mythology itself. Because across many ancient traditions, dogs did not merely accompany the living. They accompanied the dead. They became guides through the most mysterious journey of all, the journey beyond life. In the next chapter, we will explore some of the world's most fascinating myths about dogs and the afterlife. Stories of guardians, soul guides, and supernatural companions. Stories that reveal why so many cultures imagined a dog waiting at the boundary between life and death. And why, for countless generations, people believed that no traveler should face the unknown alone. Chapter 11. The Dog Who Guided the Dead. Imagine standing at the edge of an ancient world. Behind you lies the land of the living. Ahead stretches a mysterious path into the unknown. No one knows exactly what waits beyond. No one has returned to describe it. The journey is uncertain, dangerous, perhaps frightening. Now imagine that beside you stands a dog, faithful, watchful, ready to lead the way. This image appears again and again throughout human history. Across continents and cultures, dogs frequently became associated with death, the afterlife, and the journey of the soul. The details change from one society to another. The names changed. The stories changed. Yet a remarkably consistent idea survived. When humans imagined crossing into another world, dogs were often there, guiding, guarding, protecting. The pattern is so widespread that scholars have given a name to such figures. They're called psychopomps. A psychopomp is a being that guides souls from the world of the living to the world of the dead. Many cultures imagine psychopomps in different forms. Birds, spirits, deities. But dogs appear with unusual frequency. Why? The answer may lie in the relationship humans had already developed with them during life. Dogs were guides long before they became spiritual guides. They led hunters to prey, helped travelers navigate difficult terrain, protected people from danger, accompanied them through uncertainty. When humans tried to imagine who might escort a soul through the greatest journey of all, dogs seemed like natural candidates. One of the most famous examples comes from ancient Greece. The Greeks told stories about a terrifying canine guardian known as Cerberus. Cerberus. According to myth, Cerberus stood at the entrance to the underworld. Often described as a massive multi-headed dog, he guarded the realm of the dead. His duty was simple: prevent the dead from leaving, prevent the living from entering. He stood at the boundary between worlds. To modern audiences, Cerberus often appears monstrous. Yet his role reflects a familiar theme: a dog protecting a threshold, a dog guarding an important place, a dog ensuring order. These were duties real dogs performed every day. Greek mythology simply elevated those responsibilities into the supernatural realm. Another fascinating example appears in ancient Persia. Within the religious traditions of early Iranian peoples, dogs occupied a respected spiritual position. Certain texts describe dogs as possessing protective powers. Some funerary practices even involve dogs participating symbolically in rituals associated with death. One ceremony, known today through ancient writings, involved bringing a dog near the deceased. The presence of the animal was believed to offer protection against harmful spiritual forces. The idea reveals deep trust. The dog was not merely an animal. It was a guardian capable of influencing the unseen world. Again, practical experience likely shaped belief. A creature that protected families during life could also protect them after death. Farther east and north, among various Eurasian cultures, dogs frequently appeared in stories involving journeys to other realms. Some traditions described canine spirits helping souls find their way. Others imagined dogs standing watch over passages between worlds. Although details varied, the underlying symbolism remained recognizable. Dogs understood roads. Dogs guided travelers. Dogs knew how to find their way home. Who better to guide a soul through unfamiliar territory? The pattern extends far beyond Europe and Asia. Throughout the Americas, many indigenous traditions also connected dogs with the afterlife. Specific beliefs differed enormously among cultures, but recurring themes emerge. Dogs often helped souls travel. They crossed rivers, escorted spirits, protected the dead during difficult journeys. In some stories, a soul could not complete its passage without canine assistance. The dog became an essential companion during the transition from one existence to another. What makes these similarities so remarkable is that many of these cultures developed independently. Ancient Greeks did not learn their beliefs from indigenous American communities. Persian traditions emerged separately from those of Siberia, yet all repeatedly arrived at related ideas. The explanation may be surprisingly simple. People everywhere experienced similar relationships with dogs. Dogs protected them, traveled with them, warned them of danger, remained loyal through hardship. When humans imagined the ultimate journey, they naturally projected those qualities into their beliefs about death. The familiar companion became the supernatural companion. The trusted guardian became the guardian of souls. Imagine an ancient funeral. A loved one has died. The community gathers. Mourners face the difficult reality of loss. Questions arise. Where has the person gone? What happens next? Will they be safe? Will they find their way? Religious beliefs often emerge from such concerns. They provide comfort, meaning, hope. Within many of those beliefs, dogs offered reassurance. The soul would not travel alone. A faithful guide would accompany it. A protector would remain nearby. The symbolism is powerful because it draws upon real experiences. Anyone who has ever walked a dark path with a loyal dog understands the feeling. The animal's presence creates confidence. The world feels less threatening. Ancient people likely experienced the same sensation. Dogs reduced fear during life. It is easy to understand why people imagine them reducing fear after death as well. These ideas may also help explain certain archaeological discoveries. When dogs appear in human graves, spiritual interpretations become possible. Perhaps the animal represented companionship. Perhaps it represented protection. Perhaps it was intended to guide the deceased through the next stage of existence. Researchers cannot always determine which explanation is correct. Different cultures almost certainly held different beliefs. Yet mythology demonstrates that such interpretations are entirely plausible. Dogs occupied important positions within spiritual imagination. They mattered not only in practical life, but also in sacred thought. Another reason dogs became associated with death may involve their behavior around burial sites. Throughout history, canines often lived near human settlements. They observed funerals, moved through cemeteries, remained present during mourning rituals. People repeatedly encountered dogs in contexts connected with death. Over time, those associations accumulated. The animal became linked to both worlds, the world of the living and the world of the dead, a bridge between realms, a guardian at the threshold, a guide on the road ahead. The result was a remarkable collection of myths stretching across centuries and continents. Some portrayed dogs as terrifying guardians. Others emphasized loyalty and companionship. Some focused on protection, others on guidance. But nearly all reflected the same underlying truth. Humans trustadugis. They trusted them so deeply that many imagined relying on them even after death. That trust left traces not only in stories, but also in graves. Because when people believed dogs possessed special spiritual significance, some dogs received extraordinary treatment after death. Not ordinary burials, not simple graves, but carefully prepared resting places that reflected status, respect, and affection. The next chapter explores those remarkable discoveries. Graves built for exceptional dogs. Burials that reveal just how important certain canine companions became, and what those graves can teach us about the people who love them. Chapter 12. Special dogs received special graves. Imagine walking through an ancient cemetery. Most graves are simple. A body placed in the earth. A few possessions. A modest marker, if any survives at all. Then you encounter something different. A grave that stands out. A burial prepared with unusual care. A resting place that required extra effort, extra resources, and extra attention. Inside lies not a king, not a warrior, not a priest, a dog. For archaeologists, discoveries like these are among the most revealing pieces of evidence in the study of ancient human-animal relationships. They show that some dogs occupied positions far beyond ordinary usefulness. These animals were not treated as expendable tools. They were honored, remembered, in some cases, perhaps even celebrated. Across the ancient world, researchers have uncovered dog burials that appear unusually elaborate. The details vary from culture to culture, but the pattern is clear. Certain dogs received special treatment after death. And whenever people invest significant effort in a burial, archaeologists ask an important question. Why? What made this individual so important? One clue comes from the construction of the graves themselves. Some dogs were buried in carefully prepared pits rather than being discarded with ordinary refuse. Their bodies were positioned deliberately. Sometimes they were placed on bedding or within specially designated areas. The care evident in these burials suggests that someone wanted to ensure the animal received a proper farewell. Such attention rarely occurs by accident. Another clue comes from grave goods. In many ancient societies, objects were buried alongside the dead. These items might include tools, ornaments, food offerings, or symbolic possessions. When similar objects appear in dog graves, they immediately attract attention. The inclusion of grave goods suggests that the burial held meaning. The dog was not simply being disposed of. The burial was performing a social, emotional, or spiritual function. Imagine a community preparing the grave of an exceptional hunting dog. For years, the animal helped locate prey, guided hunters, contributed to successful expeditions. Perhaps it became famous within the group. Children recognized it. Adults trusted it. Stories were told about its abilities. When such a dog died, a simple disposal might have felt insufficient. Instead, the community chose ceremony. The grave became a way of expressing respect, a way of acknowledging the dog's contribution, a way of preserving memory. Some archaeological sites reveal particularly striking examples. In parts of Siberia, researchers have discovered dogs buried in ways resembling human funerary treatment. Certain animals received individual graves and careful positioning. The effort involved suggests these dogs possessed special status within their communities. Perhaps they were skilled hunters. Perhaps they held spiritual significance. Perhaps they were beloved companions. The exact reason may never be known. Yet the burial itself communicates importance. Elsewhere, dogs have been found buried with ornaments. These might include decorative items, collars, beads, or other objects associated with identity and status. Such discoveries are especially fascinating because they imply recognition of the dog as an individual. Someone selected those objects. Someone placed them intentionally. Someone believed they belonged with that specific animal. That act reflects thought, memory, meaning. In some cases, archaeologists have even identified what appear to be dedicated animal cemeteries. Rather than isolated graves, these sites contain numerous, carefully buried animals. The existence of such cemeteries demonstrates organized practices surrounding animal death. People repeatedly returned to the same locations, repeatedly invested effort, repeatedly treated certain animals with respect. Dogs often appear prominently within these contexts. What can these special graves tell us? First, they reveal that ancient societies were capable of forming deep attachments to individual animals. The graves are not anonymous. Each represents a specific dog that mattered to specific people. Second, they suggest that dogs could achieve status within human communities. Not necessarily status in the political sense, but social significance, recognition, value. The dog became someone known and remembered. Third, these burials highlight the complexity of human-dog relationships. Modern discussions sometimes divide animals into simple categories: pets, workers, companions, guardians. But ancient dogs often occupied multiple roles simultaneously. A dog might be a hunter, protector, friend, and spiritual symbol all at once. Its burial could reflect all of those identities. Imagine a dog that spent 10 years protecting a settlement. Night after night, it barked at approaching dangers, warned sleeping families, guarded children, accompanied travelers. Over time, the animal became woven into community life. People depended upon it, trusted it, perhaps even loved it. When it died, the community responded. The burial became a final act of gratitude, a recognition that the dog had earned a place in memory. This idea resonates strongly with modern experiences. Today, many people create memorials for beloved pets. They preserve photographs, plant trees, keep collars, write tributes, visit graves. The specific customs differ, but the underlying impulse remains familiar. Humans seek ways to remember companions who matter to them. Ancient special dog graves may represent similar emotions. Different cultures, different rituals, same desire to honor a meaningful relationship. Of course, not every elaborate dog burial necessarily reflects affection alone. Status and symbolism also played important roles. In some societies, dogs were associated with religious beliefs. A special grave may have acknowledged spiritual significance. In others, certain dogs may have been linked to social prestige. Owning a particularly valued hunting or guarding dog could reflect status within the community. Again, multiple explanations can coexist. Human motivations are rarely simple. What makes these burials so fascinating is precisely that complexity. Each grave is a puzzle, a silent message from people who lived thousands of years ago. The objects, positioning, and treatment provide clues, but they never reveal the entire story. We know the dog mattered. We know someone cared enough to create the grave. Beyond that, much remains open to interpretation. Yet even uncertainty carries value. It reminds us that ancient people were as emotionally complex as we are. They formed attachments, held beliefs, created rituals, remembered individuals. And sometimes those individuals happen to be dogs. As archaeologists continue uncovering new sites, each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle. Another glimpse into relationships long vanished. Another example of a bond strong enough to leave traces in the earth. But graves alone cannot tell the entire story. To understand these dogs fully, researchers must examine the animals themselves. Their bones, their teeth, their DNA, their injuries. Fortunately, modern science provides remarkable tools for doing exactly that. Today, archaeologists can learn astonishing details from ancient dog remains. They can discover what dogs ate, where they traveled, how they lived, even whether humans cared for them during illness. The next chapter explores how scientists read these hidden stories preserved inside ancient bones, and what those discoveries reveal about the lives of dogs buried thousands of years ago. Chapter 13. What dog bones tell archaeologists. Imagine holding a single ancient bone in your hand. At first glance, it may not seem particularly remarkable. It is weathered, fragile, silent, thousands of years old. Yet to an archaeologist, that bone is not merely a fragment of the past. It is a record, a document written not with words, but with biology. Hidden within it are clues about diet, disease, movement, injury, age, and even relationships. The bone cannot speak, but modern science has learned how to listen. And thanks to those scientific techniques, researchers are uncovering extraordinary details about the lives of ancient dogs. Details that help explain why so many received careful burials. For much of archaeology's history, researchers could only make educated guesses about ancient animals. A skeleton could reveal size and approximate age. Beyond that, information was limited. Today, however, advances in technology have transformed the field. Scientists can analyze DNA, study chemical signatures, examine microscopic damage, investigate diseases and injuries. Each method adds another layer to the story. One of the most powerful tools is DNA analysis. Every living creature carries genetic information. Even after death, tiny fragments of that information can sometimes survive within bones and teeth. By extracting and studying ancient DNA, researchers can trace relationships between dogs and wolves. They can identify populations, track migrations, and reconstruct parts of the long journey from wild predator to domesticated companion. These studies have revealed that dog domestication was not a simple event. It unfolded over thousands of years. Different dog populations spread across continents alongside human communities. As people migrated, dogs often traveled with them. Their histories became intertwined. In many ways, studying ancient dog DNA is also studying human history. The movements of one species often reflect the movements of the other. But genetics is only part of the story. Another remarkable technique involves isotope analysis. The name sounds complicated, but the basic idea is surprisingly simple. The food an animal eats leaves chemical signatures within its bones. By analyzing those signatures, scientists can learn about ancient diets. This method has produced fascinating discoveries. Some ancient dogs appear to have eaten diets very similar to those of nearby humans. The chemical evidence suggests they shared food resources. In some communities, dogs consumed the same kinds of meat and other foods as the people around them. This finding reinforces the idea that dogs were deeply integrated into human society. They were not merely scavengers surviving on scraps. They were participants in household life. Their well-being mattered. Imagine a dog living thousands of years ago. It shares meals with its human companions, receives food during difficult seasons, travels alongside the group. Years later, traces of those meals remain preserved in its skeleton. Scientists discover them thousands of years afterward. The bond survives in chemistry. Bones also preserve evidence of injury. This is where some of the most touching discoveries emerge. Researchers frequently encounter ancient dog skeletons showing signs of serious trauma. Broken legs, damaged joints, severe infections, dental disease. Many of these conditions healed before the animal died. That detail is crucial. Healing requires time and survival. A dog with a badly broken leg may struggle to hunt. A dog suffering from illness may become weak. Without assistance, many would not survive. Yet some clearly did. The bones reveal recovery. The fractures knitted together. The injuries healed. The animals lived for months or even years afterward. What does this tell us? Most likely, humans cared for them. Someone provided food. Someone protected them. Someone invested effort in keeping them alive. These discoveries offer some of the strongest evidence for emotional attachment in ancient societies. Practical considerations alone do not always explain such care. A severely injured dog might no longer contribute significantly to hunting or guarding. Yet people continued supporting it. The decision suggests compassion, loyalty, affection, qualities familiar to modern pet owners. One famous example comes from the ancient dog discovered at Bonn Oberkassel in Germany. As discussed earlier, researchers found evidence that the puppy suffered from a serious illness, likely canine distemper. The disease would have left the animal extremely vulnerable. Survival would have required weeks of care. The puppy could not have managed alone. Human assistance almost certainly saved its life, at least temporarily. The discovery is remarkable because it occurred more than 14,000 years ago, long before written history, long before modern veterinary medicine. Yet people were already nursing sick dogs, already investing energy in their survival, already treating them as beings worth helping. Modern veterinary science provides another perspective. Researchers can identify signs of arthritis, infections, dental problems, and other medical conditions in ancient remains. Some dogs lived into old age despite physical challenges. Their skeletons show were accumulated over years of activity. These animals were not disposable. They remained part of their communities throughout their lives. Imagine an elderly dog whose joints ache after years of hunting. Its pace slows. Its strength diminishes. Yet it continues living among people who know it, who remember its younger days, who provide support. Eventually, the dog dies, and perhaps receives the careful burial archaeologists discover thousands of years later. The bones tell both stories, the story of life and the story of care. Scientists can even learn about the work dogs performed. Repeated physical activities sometimes leave characteristic marks on bones. A dog that regularly pulled loads, traveled long distances, or engaged in intense activity may develop specific skeletal changes. While interpretation must remain cautious, such evidence helps researchers reconstruct daily life. The skeleton becomes a biography written in bone, a record of experiences accumulated across years. Together, these scientific techniques reveal something extraordinary. Ancient dogs were not anonymous animals drifting through prehistory. They were individuals. They lived unique lives, experienced injuries, received care, shared meals, traveled with humans, formed relationships, and sometimes died surrounded by people who valued them. The science makes those lives visible. What is perhaps most surprising is how familiar many of these stories feel. The injured dog cared for by its family. The elderly companion supported through old age. The animal remembered after death. These experiences are not uniquely modern. They stretch deep into the past. Across thousands of years, the human-dog bond shows remarkable continuity. Technology has changed. Civilizations have risen and fallen. Languages have appeared and disappeared. Yet certain aspects of the relationship remain recognizable. And as archaeologists continue uncovering evidence, another question emerges. If people cared for dogs so deeply during life, how did they respond when those dogs died? Can grief itself leave traces in the archaeological record? Can sadness survive thousands of years? The next chapter explores that possibility, because hidden within some ancient graves are clues suggesting that the people who buried their dogs may have experienced emotions surprisingly similar to our own. Emotions of loss, of remembrance, and perhaps a mourning. Chapter 14. The sadness found in prehistoric graves. Imagine losing someone who has been beside you for years. Someone who greeted you every morning. Someone who accompanied you through ordinary days and difficult moments. Someone whose presence became so familiar that you rarely noticed it until it was gone. Now, imagine trying to express that loss in a world without photographs, without written memorials, without social media posts or framed portraits. How would you remember them? How would you say goodbye? For ancient people, one answer was burial. And in some prehistoric dog graves, archaeologists believe they may be seeing traces of something profoundly human. Grief. Grief is one of the most difficult things for archaeology to study. A stone tool can survive for thousands of years. A bone can survive. A grave can survive. But emotions do not fossilize. Sadness leaves no skeleton. Love leaves no artifact. Mourning does not preserve itself in the ground. Researchers must look for indirect evidence. Patterns, actions, choices, the things people did when faced with loss. And when archaeologists examine certain dog burials, those choices can be remarkably revealing. One of the most important clues is care. Again and again, ancient dog graves show evidence of deliberate preparation. Bodies were positioned carefully. Graves were dug intentionally. Sometimes dogs were buried alone rather than discarded alongside refuse. These actions required effort, time, attention. The people involved could have chosen easier options. Instead, they chose burial. That choice itself suggests significance. Imagine a community living 12,000 years ago. Resources are limited. Daily survival demands constant work. Food must be gathered, tools repaired, shelters maintained. Every task consumes valuable energy. Yet when a dog dies, someone takes the time to dig a grave. Someone places the body carefully inside. Someone ensures the burial is completed properly. Why? The simplest explanation is that the animal mattered. And when something matters, its loss matters too. One particularly intriguing area of research involves body positioning. Archaeologists often study how remains are arranged within graves. The position of a body can reveal whether burial occurred deliberately or naturally. In many ancient dog burials, the positioning appears intentional. The animal was not tossed into a pit. It was laid to rest, sometimes curled as if sleeping, sometimes placed beside humans, sometimes arranged in ways suggesting respect and attention. These details do not prove grief, but they are consistent with mourning behavior. Another fascinating clue comes from grave goods. As discussed earlier, some dogs were buried with objects, ornaments, tools, offerings, items that carried symbolic meaning. Such objects often reflect relationships between the living and the dead. The inclusion of grave goods suggests that the burial was more than practical disposal. It was meaningful, a ritual, a farewell, a way of acknowledging loss. Imagine placing a treasured object beside a beloved companion before burial. The act carries emotional weight. It says something about remembrance, about connection, about the desire to honor a life that has ended. Ancient people may have felt similar impulses. Some archaeologists have even explored evidence for flowers in prehistoric burials. The idea is famous because of discoveries at certain ancient human graves where pollen was found. Researchers have debated whether flowers were intentionally placed there or whether natural processes produced the pollen deposits. The question remains controversial. Yet the discussion highlights an important point. Humans have long sought symbolic ways to express grief. If flowers, offerings, or other ritual objects appeared in burials, they may reflect emotional responses to death. Whether those responses involve humans, dogs, or both remains difficult to determine. Still, the possibility is compelling. The most powerful evidence may come from the broader pattern itself. Dog burials occur repeatedly across thousands of years and across enormous geographic distances. Different cultures, different environments, different belief systems. Yet people continue burying dogs. The practice persists. That persistence suggests the relationship touched something deeply meaningful. Not every burial can be explained by utility. Not every grave reflects religious symbolism alone. Some likely represent personal loss. A community mourning a companion. A family saying goodbye. A child losing a friend. Modern experiences can help us understand this possibility. Today, the death of a beloved dog often produces genuine grief. People cry, hold memorials, keep photographs, visit graves. The emotional response can be intense. Anyone who has loved a dog understands why. Dogs become part of daily life, part of routines, part of memories. When they disappear, the absence is felt. There is no reason to assume ancient people were incapable of similar emotions. In many ways, their relationships with dogs may have been even more intimate. Dogs traveled with them, worked alongside them, protected them, shared every aspect of life. The bond was constant. Imagine an elderly hunter returning to camp after years of partnership with a trusted dog. The animal has accompanied countless journeys. Track game, warned of danger, slept beside the fire. Then one day, the dog is gone. The camp feels quieter. The familiar companion no longer appears. The routines change. The absence becomes impossible to ignore. Would a hunter feel sadness? The archaeological record cannot answer directly, but human experience suggests the possibility, and the care shown in many burials makes that possibility difficult to dismiss. Another revealing clue comes from the treatment of dogs during illness and old age. As we saw in the previous chapter, some animals survived serious injuries and diseases because humans cared for them. Such investment often reflects emotional attachment. People rarely devote extensive resources to creatures they do not value. When those cared for animals eventually died, the grief may have been especially strong. The relationship had already moved beyond practicality. It had become personal. The burial became the final expression of that connection. Perhaps the most important lesson from these graves is that ancient people were emotionally complex. It is easy to imagine prehistory as a world concerned only with survival, a world of hunting, danger, and hardship. Those realities certainly existed, but people also formed friendships, loved companions, remembered the dead, experienced loss. The dog burials remind us of that humanity. Beneath the archaeological data lies a simple truth. These are relationships, real relationships between real individuals. A person and a dog, a family and a companion, a community and a trusted guardian. The graves survive because those relationships mattered enough to leave physical traces. Thousands of years later, we can still see them. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to recognize something familiar. The sadness of goodbye, the desire to remember, the need to honor a life that mattered. And when we step back and examine all the evidence together, a larger question emerges. Why do humans keep doing this? Why did communities separated by centuries and continents repeatedly bury dogs? What combination of love, loyalty, belief, and necessity produced such a widespread practice? The answer is not simple. There was never a single reason. Instead, there are many. And together, they reveal one of the oldest and most remarkable relationships in human history. That is the story of the next chapter. Chapter 15. Why humans kept burying dogs for thousands of years. Imagine spreading a map of the world across a table. Now place a marker on every site where archaeologists have discovered an ancient dog burial. One marker appears in Germany, another in Israel. More appear across Siberia. Others emerge throughout Russia. Ancient Egypt adds many more. The Americas contribute hundreds of additional examples. Soon the map begins to fill. Different continents, different cultures, different eras. Yet the same pattern appears again and again. Humans buriados. For thousands of years. The question that began this journey now returns. Why? After exploring the evidence, the answer becomes both clearer and more complicated. There was no single reason, no universal explanation, no one story that fits every grave. Instead, dog burials emerged from a combination of factors that varied from place to place and from culture to culture. Love, loyalty, religion, partnership, status, memory, all played a role. To understand why the practice endured for so long, we must consider each of these possibilities together. Perhaps the simplest explanation is companionship. By the time many of these burials occurred, dogs had already spent thousands of years living alongside humans. They shared camps, shared journeys, shared dangers, shared daily routines. The relationship was intimate. Dogs were present during ordinary moments as well as extraordinary ones. They watched children grow, accompanied hunters, guarded families through the night, Over time, emotional attachment became inevitable. People cared about individual dogs, and when those dogs died, burial offered a way to express that care. Many graves likely reflect exactly this kind of affection. Not grand religious symbolism, not practical necessity, just the desire to honor a companion. Anyone who has ever mourned a beloved dog can understand the impulse. Across thousands of years, that emotional response remains recognizable. Yet companionship alone cannot explain every burial. Dogs were also workers, and in many societies, they were extraordinarily valuable workers. A skilled hunting dog could transform a hunt. A vigilant guardian could save lives. A reliable companion could contribute directly to survival. In environments where resources were scarce, such contributions mattered enormously. Imagine losing a dog that helped feed your family for years. The animal's value extended far beyond sentiment. Its death represented the loss of an important partner. Burial may have served as recognition of that service, a final acknowledgement of the dog's role within the community. In this sense, some graves resemble monuments to respected colleagues, tributes to individuals who made meaningful contributions. Another powerful factor was loyalty. Few animals demonstrate loyalty as consistently as dogs. Again and again, dogs remain beside humans during difficult circumstances. They protect, defend, accompany, persist. Ancient people undoubtedly noticed these qualities. Stories were told, memories accumulated. Particular dogs became known for their devotion. When such animals died, communities may have felt compelled to honor them. The burial became an expression of gratitude, a way of saying thank you, a way of recognizing years of faithful companionship. Religion also played a major role. As we have seen, many cultures associated dogs with the spiritual world. Dogs guided souls, protected the dead, guarded sacred boundaries, served divine figures. In ancient Egypt, canine symbolism became deeply integrated into religious practice. Elsewhere, dogs appeared in myths and rituals connected with death and the afterlife. When spiritual beliefs assign special significance to an animal, burial practices often follow. Some dogs may have been buried because communities believe they possess sacred qualities. Others may have been intended to accompany humans into the next world. Still others may have represented divine protection. The exact beliefs differed, but the underlying principle remained similar. Dogs mattered spiritually. Status provides another possible explanation. Certain dogs occupied prestigious positions. Exceptional hunters, valued guardians, animals associated with influential individuals. Special burials may have reflected that status. The grave communicated importance. It told the community that this dog was not ordinary. It had earned recognition. It deserved remembrance. This explanation becomes especially plausible in cases involving elaborate graves or unusual offerings. The burial itself becomes a statement about significance. Yet perhaps the most important factor is memory. Burials are often less about the dead than about the living. They help communities process loss, preserve relationships, maintain connections to the past. When people buried dogs, they were doing more than disposing of bodies. They were creating memories, creating places of remembrance, creating physical evidence that a particular life mattered. The grave became a bridge between presence and absence, a way of ensuring that the companion would not simply disappear. This impulse appears throughout human history. People remember those they value. They create rituals around loss. They seek meaning in farewell. Dogs became part of those traditions because dogs became part of human lives. What makes the story especially remarkable is its longevity. The relationship endured through enormous changes in human history. Dogs accompanied hunter-gatherers, then farmers, then urban civilizations, then empires, then modern nations. Entire cultures disappeared. Languages vanished. Religions transformed. Technologies evolved. Yet dogs remained, and so did the practice of honoring them after death. The persistence of dog burials suggests something fundamental. The human-dog bond is not tied to any particular civilization. It is not limited to one religion. It is not restricted to one way of life. Instead, it appears wherever humans and dogs spend enough time together. The relationship repeatedly generates affection, trust, respect, meaning. Different cultures express those feelings differently, but the underlying connection remains surprisingly consistent. Imagine two graves separated by 10,000 years. One belongs to an Ice Age hunter-gatherer community. The other belongs to a later civilization. The people differ. The customs differ. The beliefs differ. Yet both graves contain dogs buried with care. The details may not match, but the gesture does. Someone wanted to honor the animal. Someone believed the relationship mattered. That shared impulse links the graves across vast stretches of time. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. When archaeologists uncover dog burials, they are not merely studying animals. They are studying relationships. The graves reveal how humans thought about companionship, how they experienced loyalty, how they responded to loss, how they expressed respect. Each burial is a small window into the emotional lives of ancient people. And through those windows, a consistent image emerges. Dogs were not simply useful creatures. They were partners, companions, friends, sometimes family. The reasons for burying them varied, but the underlying bond remained remarkably strong. Strong enough to survive thousands of years. Strong enough to leave traces in the archaeological record. Strong enough that even today, we recognize it immediately. Yet one final story remains. We began with a grave, a human and a dog buried side by side. Now it is time to return to that grave one last time, because in its silence lies the deepest answer of all. Not an answer about archaeology, not an answer about religion, but an answer about one of the oldest friendships in human history, and why, when the dog died, so many people chose not to leave it behind. Chapter 16, The Dog Beside the Fire, the Dog Beside the Grave. Imagine once more that ancient grave. The excavation is nearly complete. The soil has been brushed away. The outlines are clear now. A human skeleton rests in the earth. Beside it lies a dog. Thousands of years have passed since they were buried. The people who dug the grave are gone. Their language has vanished. Their stories have been forgotten. Their names disappeared long ago. Yet one thing remains visible. They chose to stay together. And that simple choice may tell us more than any artifact ever could. For archaeologists, the grave is evidence. A collection of bones. A burial site. A source of information. But behind every discovery lies a human story. A life once lived. A relationship once shared. A friendship that existed long before history was written down. To understand why the dog was buried there, we must imagine the life that came before the grave. Perhaps it began beside a campfire. The night air is cold. Darkness stretches beyond the circle of light. A small group of people sits around the flames. Nearby, a dog lies curled on the ground. Its ears twitch occasionally. Its nose lifts toward unfamiliar scents. The people feel safer because the dog is there. The dog feels safer because the people are there. Neither knows that together they are participating in one of the most successful partnerships in the history of life on Earth. Days become months. Months become years. The dog grows from a curious puppy into a trusted companion. It follows hunting parties into forests, tracks animals across snow, warns the camp when strangers approach, stands watch while others sleep. Again and again, the dog proves its value. Not because anyone forces it to, but because cooperation has become natural. The relationship deepens through countless ordinary moments. Moments that leave no archaeological trace. A child laughing as the dog chases a stick. A hunter sharing scraps from a successful meal. A family sleeping beside a familiar companion during a storm. A traveler feeling less alone because a dog walks beside them. These moments disappear from the archaeological record. Bones cannot preserve them. Artifacts cannot describe them. Yet they may be the most important part of the story. Because relationships are built from ordinary days, not extraordinary ones. Imagine the dog growing older. Its muzzle begins to gray. Its movements become slower. The long hunts become more difficult. The sharp senses that once seemed unstoppable gradually fade. Yet the dog remains part of the community. People recognize it. Remember its younger years. Remember the dangers it helped them survive. The successful hunts. The warnings in the night. The years of loyalty. Then one day the dog dies. The camp feels different. Quieter. An absence appears where a familiar presence once existed. Perhaps children ask where the dog has gone. Perhaps hunters feel the loss of a trusted partner. Perhaps someone simply misses seeing the animal beside the fire each evening. The reaction may not be dramatic. It may not involve tears or ceremony. Or perhaps it does. Every community responds differently to loss. But what happens next is what matters. Someone digs a grave. Someone places the dog carefully inside. Someone decides that this animal deserves more than abandonment, more than disposal. The dog deserves remembrance. And so the burial begins. Now imagine another possibility. Perhaps the human in the grave died first. The dog remained behind. Maybe it continued searching for its companion, continued sleeping near familiar places, continued waiting. Stories throughout history are filled with examples of dogs displaying remarkable loyalty after the death of their owners. Ancient people undoubtedly witnessed similar behavior. Such loyalty leaves an impression. It becomes unforgettable. When the dog eventually dies, perhaps the community chooses to reunite them. The burial becomes a final act of recognition, a statement that their connection mattered. We cannot know whether this specific story happened, but thousands of graves suggest that many stories like it did. Each burial represents a relationship. Each grave marks a connection between humans and dogs. And together, those graves form a pattern stretching across continents and millennia. The remarkable thing is how early this pattern appears. Long before cities, long before kingdoms, long before written language, humans were already burying dogs. This fact tells us something profound. The human-dog bond is older than civilization itself, older than agriculture, older than most of the institutions that define human history. Before pyramids rose above the Egyptian desert, humans and dogs were together. Before emperors ruled vast territories, humans and dogs were together. Before books, monuments, and recorded history, humans and dogs were together. The partnership survived because it benefited both species. Humans gained protection, hunting assistance, companionship, and security. Dogs gained food, shelter, safety, and social connection. But practical benefits alone do not fully explain the graves. The burials suggest something more, something emotional, something symbolic, something deeply personal. Over time, the partnership became a relationship, and the relationship became a bond. That bond appears again and again throughout our journey. In Ice Age camps, in ancient villages, in Egyptian cemeteries, in Siberian graves, in the Americas, across every continent where dogs accompanied humans. Different cultures interpreted the relationship differently. Some emphasized hunting, others emphasized religion. Some saw dogs as spiritual guides. Others treated them as family members. Yet beneath those differences lies a common thread. People cared. People remembered. People chose to honor dogs after death. Perhaps that is why these graves continue to affect us so strongly today. When archaeologists uncover a dog buried beside a human, we recognize something familiar. The details may belong to another world, but the emotion feels understandable. We know what it means to trust a companion. We know what it means to miss one. We know what it means to remember. The graves remind us that ancient people experienced those feelings too. They were not so different from us. They loved. They grieved. They formed attachments. And sometimes those attachments cross the boundary between species. In a sense, the dog burials are not merely about dogs. They're about humanity. They reveal our capacity to form relationships beyond ourselves, to care for another creature, to recognize loyalty, to value companionship, to remember those who shared our lives. That lesson may be the most important discovery of all, because when we look at those ancient graves, we are not simply looking into the past. We're looking into a mirror. The same bond that led a hunter-gatherer to bury a beloved dog thousands of years ago is the bond that causes people today to mourn their pets, preserve their photographs, and visit their graves. The technology has changed. The world has changed, but the relationship remains. And so we return one final time to the grave beside the human. The excavation is finished. The evidence has been recorded. The archaeologists step back and consider what they have found. A human, a dog, buried together. The bones cannot tell us their names. They cannot tell us exactly how they met. They cannot tell us how many hunts they completed, how many nights they shared beside a fire, or how many dangers they survived together. But they tell us one thing with remarkable clarity. When death came, someone believed they belonged side by side. And perhaps that is the simplest answer to the question that began this journey. Why did ancient humans bury their dogs? Sometimes because dogs were hunters. Sometimes because they were guardians. Sometimes because they were spiritual guides. Sometimes because they represented status or belief. But very often, perhaps, for the same reason many people would do so today. Because the dog mattered. Because it had shared a life. Because it had earned a place in memory. Because long before cities, kingdoms, or written language, humans and dogs had already become companions. And when the dog died, many people chose not to leave it behind. They buried it with care. They buried it with respect. They buried it with love. And through those ancient graves, that love has survived for thousands of years.